I didn't realize there's so many people here. Really astounded. Program Director, thank you very much for allowing me to speak here this evening, as well as the leadership of Al Jamia Mosque. Thank you very, very much. Allow me to begin with the universal greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like, with your permission, to recognize the former president of the MJC, Sheikh Gabriel, who's always worked with the democratic forces in our country to advance democracy and peace in South Africa. I wish to recognize my colleague, Comrade Khalid Sayed, member of the provincial legislature. Tomorrow we don't know what we're going to be. So I was saying to Sheikh Fatah last night, so he was saying, Minister, after the election you must come and do this, do that. So I said to him, Sheikh, you may not want to talk to me after the election because I don't know what I will be. And he said to me, Minister, Wallah, we've been making so much dua for you, you will be something. And of course, His Excellency Ambassador, wonderful to have you here. And all the executive members of the board of the masjid, all respected leaders, my brothers and sisters in Islam, it's a great privilege and honor to have the opportunity to address you today. I feel overwhelmed by your kind words to me. Overwhelmed because the butchering in Palestine continues. And at this time, we don't deserve praise. We deserve to exert more effort to ensure that the people of Palestine are free. And so while I will give you an overview of the issues we have been dealing with, my core message to you is fight on. Fight on. I feel that despite all you are saying, I am doing what I am doing from too safe a position. I would wish I were shoulder to shoulder with the men and women in Rafah. That's where I feel I should be. And we have been denied that opportunity by the circumstance of our geography, and thus we must do what we can, which I shall speak about today. But I appeal to you, do not pause your activism. Do not pause being on the street. Do not pause protesting. Do not pause speaking out. Do not pause shouting out. Do not be invisible on the radio. Challenge the media that doesn't give us the facts. Be visible. Be active. Be part of what is quickly becoming a global protest movement. And that protest movement has been started by the people of Palestine, joined by the wonderful people of South Africa, and now the world is falling in behind us. And it is correct that it is South Africans who are prepared to lead. While indeed government is the one that went to the established institutions, it was you, the people of South Africa, who stood up. I never got one objection from any person in South Africa except the Democratic Alliance and the Freedom Front Plus. But from everybody else, we received encouragement, we received support, and we were told that we must carry on. But before I speak to my remarks, and I shall try to be as brief as possible, because you're familiar with many of the issues I shall speak to, but I thought before I speak about what we have all been focused upon, I want to talk about the world a little bit. Because I'm not sure that all of us understand what we're confronted by. We are engaged in a massive geopolitical struggle. And it's important that we understand that, because when you take a position, you shouldn't take it because your brother did it, or your uncle was doing it, or your sister stood up. You must stand up knowing why you are up. And the reason is, at the moment, what we are confronting as the globe is what we call an inflection point. It's a point at which history might be made and that the world may emerge geopolitically as rather different from the world that we have been used to up to now. Who is the struggle between? It's a struggle between those who seek unipolarity, that one power must tell us who and what we should be, and those who seek multipolarity. The greatest supporters of a multipolar world, where all of us have sovereignty, have a voice, and are recognized equally in international institutions, those voices are largely countries of the South, the less rich countries of the world. They are the ones who know if they allow unipolarity, they will forever be dominated by others. And those who want a unipolar world, you will see that what they do, they challenge every global institution. They pretend to respect it when it suits them, but in their core, they don't want it because they do not want accountability. What they want is their ideas, their ideology must be what rules the world, that money must determine what the world looks like, and that we as countries of the South, despite being in the majority, despite having the youngest population, we must follow their political ideology. We must adopt their ethos and ethics and not stand on our own progressive agenda, which we shape. So this mighty battle is underway. When you look at us and you see South Africa has become a very strong voice in BRICS, it's part of seeking to create institutional mechanisms that will table a different set of issues in the world, that will not be dominated by institutions that are largely controlled from the North. So this battle between the North and the South is reaching almost its zenith. And I believe this is the time when the voice of the South has to be strongest. And this is why we have been resisting being pushed into a particular corner. And we have decided as the African National Congress that we will stand up and we will speak with our own voice. We won't be told by another. Now, the forces are powerful, and don't forget that. They control much of the financial systems of the world. They even control our own resources. And it's very difficult for us to wrest control of them from these forces, but we have to do so. It's a mighty, mighty battle. So do not look just at the terrible, terrible wrath that is being wielded against the Palestinian people. Look at how Syria has been dealt with. Look at how Iran is a target. And you will realize that indeed there's a mighty ideological struggle underway. And South Africa is quickly being recognized as a key voice of the South. And what does that mean? There will be a greater focus on your country. You are going to be challenged, and you are going to need leaders who believe in an independent, progressive foreign policy. If you decide to choose leaders who are ready to be told by Israel and its funding institutions what form of policy they should have, you are going to rue the consequences. It is vital that we remain able to articulate what we believe in, to articulate what our values and principles are. And so as we stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Palestine, realize that we stand with them, but we are also standing for ourselves as part of the South. And it is vital that South Africa does not get weak knees, because we are a very important country on the African continent. We have the industrial and other capability to withstand many, many challenges. And so if we become weak-kneed, the rest of Africa will fall. It is only if South Africa has strength and is resolute that our continent will work closely with us to continue to maintain a geopolitical progressive agenda which advances multipolarity rather than embracing unipolarity and dominance by one or two. But let me come to my remarks for this evening. I'm afraid I have the bad habit that I write what I wish to say, because I'm very scared of being extemporaneous, Sheikh, because if you're extemporaneous, you can put your foot wrong, and unfortunately, you can't take it back when you're on live TV. So I write what I wish to say. And allow me to begin. Well, let me first of all say what a privilege it is to have an opportunity to speak to you tonight, which is the eve of our 7th national elections, and to speak about South Africa's efforts in support of the people of Palestine, and also speak about our representations at the International Court of Justice. I feel especially privileged that a daughter of Imam Haroon is here. It is interesting that at many historical moments for me, I happen to be with your family. And I don't know why, somehow Imam Haroon and your family seem to have something close that I appreciate deeply. So I'm so glad, my dear sister, that you are here tonight. I also wish to express appreciation for the consistent solidarity this community and this masjid has shown with our Palestinian brothers and sisters since the war against the people of Palestine began. I do not accept the notion that it's an Israeli war against Hamas. It's an Israeli war against the people of Palestine. And we needed to call it clearly. I refuse to ever say Israel war against Hamas. It's Israel war against the people of Palestine. They are murdering innocent civilians who are Palestinian. And as they act, we become more and more convinced that, in fact, the intent of genocide is clear. The voices that you, as South Africans, have articulated in support of their struggle for freedom and justice have been extremely important to them. Your commitment to this cause will never be forgotten, and the mobilization of South Africans, particularly the South African Muslim Ummah, for the Palestinian people has been absolutely exemplary. This is why a child in Palestine has learned to sing Shosholoza. It's because of you. It's because of their saying to you, the people of South Africa, we thank you. As government, we have done what we think we can to support the people of Gaza through the legal mechanisms available to all governments that are state parties to the Geneva Convention and the International Court of Justice. There are many people who write to me. I get lots of emails, sometimes from some of you here. You write to me and you say, Minister Pandor, you're not radical enough, you know? You're not doing enough. When are you going to lead jihad? I can't. And so I say to them, the world has established institutions whose mandate is to protect people, whose mandate is peace and security, whose mandate is to judge on issues of international law. And it is vital, as people of the South, that we test these institutions, because you know that the powerful, when we are at fault, they are very quick to take us to these institutions. So now, as the government of South Africa, we have called them out because we have taken them to the very institutions they have been saying our African leaders should go to. And it is quite amazing to hear President Biden complain about the ICC. When it was Vice President Ruto and President Kenyatta, they were very keen on the ICC. Now, when it is facing a very close friend of theirs, suddenly the ICC must be sanctioned. This is the duplicity that we have been wanting to expose. And so do not believe we are doing something that is inane or that has no force and effect. We're doing something very significant. These bodies were established to ensure that all of us obey international law. And we can't allow major powers to dismiss the importance of these institutions or to dismiss the obligatory and binding nature of their rulings. We know that in the wake of the court's ruling on our most recent request for provisional measures, which was issued on Friday, May 24, the reaction of the allies of Israel has been to dismiss the relevance of the court. In what we believe is a landmark ruling, the court has ordered Israel to halt its military operations to ensure that no further harm comes to the Palestinians as a result of Israel's military actions. We know, of course, that they are continuing to kill the people of Rafah. But what they are doing is helping us to gather evidence on the genocide issue. The denial of life-saving food and medication, as well as the destruction of public institutions, all indicate that the intent we have put before the court is indeed underway. We believe that the order is groundbreaking, as it is the first time that the court explicitly mentioned that these orders are made for Israel to halt its military action in any area of Gaza, and specifically in Rafah. You will recall in the February ruling, the first one in our case, the court didn't mention cessation of hostilities. This time they have. So, dear brothers and sisters, when you see us repeatedly going to the court, do not become impatient. Our lawyers know what they're doing. We have an excellent team, and they know exactly what should be done. While, of course, legally, the court has avoided using the term ceasefire, their ruling de facto called for a ceasefire and ordered the major party in the conflict to end its belligerent action against the people of Palestine. The court has also ordered, once more, Israel to allow unimpeded access to investigators appointed by the United Nations to investigate actions that would be tantamount to genocide in the whole of Gaza. And they have said Israel must not prevent the investigators, who must be independent and experts, from collecting and preserving the evidence. This is important because for the first time, we now have a directive that independent researchers should go into areas that journalists have been prohibited from entering, and in which we've seen many journalists killed. It also allows those of us who are pursuing legal action to have independent and verified UN experts carrying out this order. We will, in the next few days, be approaching the UN Security Council with this most recent order from the court and seeking that they give effect to it. This order, like the others, are obligatory and binding. Now, we know that one of the things that the case assists us with is this matter of complicity. Those countries and officials who continue to arm and fund Israel's war machine will be liable for prosecution as well. And civil society organizations will certainly take up such cases and hold those who have facilitated this genocide accountable by taking them to court. Already, there's a planned class action on all foreigners who have been serving in the IDF. A group of 140 international lawyers are working on this case and are very carefully identifying each of these non-citizens of Israel, including South Africans, who've been fighting in Israel, and a class action will soon be underway. Allahu Akbar. We have also welcomed the decision by the ICC Chief Prosecutor, Karim Khan, to request the ICC judges to issue arrest warrants, the ICJ rather, judges, to issue arrest warrants for the butcher, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and his defense minister, Yoav Gallant. While, in our view, this decision took very long, we believe it is significant as it indicates that the court, the ICC, is not only set up to prosecute Africans or those from the global south, but is also intent on holding Western countries with powerful allies accountable for their war crimes and crimes against humanity. This is what we certainly need at this historical juncture I have referred to, in order to renew faith in our international institutions whose mandate is to dispense justice equitably. It is very disturbing that the US Speaker of the House of Congress, Mike Johnson, has responded to the ICC prosecutor's decision by saying America should punish the ICC and put Karim Khan back in his place. This is what I've also received. He said if the ICC is allowed to threaten Israel's leaders, then we know that America will be next. Our response is, of course. He said the International Court is a direct affront to our sovereignty. We don't put any international body above American sovereignty. We have some very aggressive legislation that we are going to push as the House. It will impose sanctions if the ICC moves forward with its absurd request. It will be a big international problem. He's right, it's going to be a big international problem, but not the way he thinks. Such a statement needs to be rejected because the very concept of international law negates what Speaker Johnson believes. If countries don't respect international law and the institutions created to uphold it, then what would become of a global institution and countries that have to respect international systems? Such disregard for the rules and laws which we all created at the end of the Second World War to prevent genocide and gross abuse of human rights is simply unacceptable. Of course, there are some among us who believe all these institutions are useless and should be rejected. Our question to them would be, what would replace them? So we must be very careful about some of our radical notions, because often we haven't thought of the consequences. And we know that there is an intention to weaken the United Nations so that it can be directed by those who have money. We want a stronger United Nations, but a more representative and democratic one, and one with capacity to protect the innocent. But we don't want the destruction of the UN, because we don't want any system where we will be unequal to those who have money. Of course, we're extremely worried that up to now, there has been non-compliance by the State of Israel to all the measures ordered by the International Court of Justice. This is a grave violation of their obligation as a state party to the Convention on Genocide. And all it does is expose Israel's inhumanity and lack of respect for every facet of international law. When people ask me, what is it that might please you most about what has happened with respect to the ICJ case? My response is, for the first time, Israel is naked to the world. It can't hide anymore. And South Africa is the one that made that visible. The court tried to prevent Israel from causing irreparable harm to the rights we invoked under the Genocide Convention in respect of the siege of Gaza. The court agreed with our assertion that the situation in Gaza had deteriorated significantly since their order at the beginning of this year. Therefore, they decided it's right to order further provisional measures. Our concern is that because there was consensus around the adoption of these various conventions and protocols, the world made an assumption that nations would comply. And so what they did not create was an enforcement capacity. And this is what we've got to pay great attention to now, as South Africa and other countries working with South Africa. We must ensure that the United Nations Security Council has an enforcement capacity. We must ensure that Africa and other regions that are excluded from the Security Council become permanent members of the Security Council. We must ensure, when we reform the Security Council, that there can't be a veto by one. We must have a different way of decision making, and we must give a greater voice to the chamber in which all member states sit, which is the General Assembly. So there's a lot of work that we need to do. And as the government of South Africa, as the African National Congress, we've begun to do it. We are ready to do it. We are independent. We are progressive. We have a foreign policy whose foundation is human rights, as mandated by President Mandela in his first foreign policy speech after he was elected in 1994. He said, for South Africa, our foreign policy's foundation will be human rights. And this is all that we are promoting as the government of South Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have refused to give up on the legal mechanisms available in the international community to deal with Israel's intransigence. And while you may think we are not achieving great success, I wonder what you say about the fact that we have been joined by Nicaragua, Bolivia, that Brazil is considering joining us, that Ireland has indicated it will join us, and that the first of the countries in the Middle East, Egypt, has joined us, and others will follow. I wonder what you think of this, that Spain, from today, recognizes Palestine as a state, that Norway from today recognizes Palestine as a state, that Ireland from today recognizes Palestine as a state, and your own country gave that recognition when it became democratic. But it is these actions taken by the government of South Africa, led by the governing party, that are allowing other countries to fall in. So don't think you're not achieving anything. To defeat a huge monster, you sometimes have to do it piece by piece by piece. And what you have to do is you dig a hole. And that hole, as you dig it, becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And in the end, the monster will sink. The people of Palestine will achieve freedom. Amen. And we will be alongside them as they achieve freedom. So do not give in. Do not believe that we cannot do it. We are firmly of the view that the necessary condition for the implementation of all the measures of the ICJ is a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and the rest of the occupied territories. We call on the international community, including the allies of the State of Israel, not to turn a blind eye to the ongoing genocide in Gaza. The friends of Israel are constantly talking to me and calling me and shouting at me and so on. So one day, one very senior minister said she's shocked at my duplicity because I'm so strong in support of Palestine, but I never say I support Ukraine. So I told my dear colleague that, you know what, Minister, the day NATO gives arms to Palestine, I will announce support for Ukraine. If you want equality, let's have it on everything. But as long as there's inequality, we will choose a side. And we choose the people of Palestine. So it's very important. The gross human rights violations perpetrated by Israel have escalated to incomprehensible levels of cruelty, hate, and extreme violent oppression. We as the world must do far more to end the persecution of Palestinians, including the persecution of thousands of innocent women and children. Given that Israel is not complying, it is up to the global community to ensure adherence when it comes to the sanctity of humanity. We find it unacceptable that as the Palestinian people marked the 76th Nakba anniversary this month, the Biden administration notified their Congress that it plans to send another $1 billion in arms to Israel, including tanks, mortars, and tactical vehicles. Their audacity in continuing to arm Israel when it is escalating its brutal assault on Rafah and other parts of Gaza is absolutely outrageous. It is as if students at US universities and colleges across their country never rose up in protest against their government's continued arming and financing of Israel in the midst of the genocide it is carrying out with impunity. America's youth are calling for an immediate ceasefire and divestment from Israel, yet the US continues to act as an enabler of this genocide. Now, I do agree with the US students that we must have action in terms of sanctions and divestment, and I believe it is a discussion our next cabinet must have should you decide to elect the African National Congress. Of course, if you elect someone else, I don't know what they will discuss on Palestine. But I have to tell you, I will feel horribly, horribly embarrassed if when there has been an inauguration, you get a government that a few weeks later withdraws the case at the ICJ. As a South African, I will feel ashamed. So there's a lot of work for you to do to get everybody up tomorrow to vote. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm going to vote ANC, but I'm not telling you who you vote for. But I'm saying let's all be up and out if we are genuine in our voice of support for the people of Palestine. I also mentioned that I would like to ask you to continue your activism. I've been asking all parents who have children at university, can you ask your students, do they belong to student associations? Are they involved in the solidarity groups for Palestine at their campus? What is their Senate saying about relations with Israeli universities? I've asked students at universities I've spoken at that they must tell their Senate, that's academics, that they should break relations with Israeli institutions. Why? Because Israel has bombed all universities in Palestine, and not one Israeli academic has spoken out against this. And that is wrong. That is wrong. If there had been one that spoke out, I would have said that South African universities must partner with that one and break with the rest. But now the issue is they must break with all of them. We don't have to worry about Nelson Mandela University. They've broken already. Very good for them. We're also very happy University of Fort Hare has taken a clear decision, and we are pleased University of the Western Cape has also been clear. We are waiting for Stellenbosch to do the right thing in history for once. And if you have a child there, we ask you to ask your child to ask the hard questions. There's a very active group at the University of Stellenbosch. They need your support if you're a parent there, and you're able to write to find out who's the council chair, who's the chair of Senate. Write to them, the Vice Chancellor, and say, sir, we are waiting. We are waiting for you, for the first time in history, to be radical for Stellenbosch University, because that's where apartheid was made intellectual. They then must do the right thing in history. University of Cape Town didn't vote in support 2 weeks ago. I know Stellenbosch is going back to the vote. I'm not sure when UCT will go back to the vote in its Senate, but if we have children there, same thing. Very active group of young people at UCT. We must encourage them. Also Johannesburg. Wits has been a bit obdurate. I think we need to engage Wits a bit more. But we must begin. I agree with many, again, those emails to me, that the government must take some steps as well, but I don't think it could do so as it prepared for the election campaign. I believe if and when we are in government, we must begin the process of sanctions and economic ties being broken if they are not that big. But I think we should really seriously look at it. So, dear brothers and sisters, I don't want to keep you too late. All I can say to you now is a luta continua. The struggle continues. The people of Palestine are being killed in many, many large numbers. And there is no sense of morality, of regret on the part of the state of Israel. I think we should all have posters with 2, 3 simple words. Stop genocide now. Israel, stop genocide now. 4 words. All of us, all over the world, should put them on our cars, put them on our homes, put them outside supermarkets, retail stores, and just have a common message and ask all the associations. I know Sheikh Gabriel's and other leaders have links all over the world. We've got our guests present here from Lebanon and Istanbul. All of us, the same message in Arabic, in Zulu, in Xhosa, whatever. Say, Israel, stop the genocide now. We should be saying that as a common global message, which will say to Israel, you are on notice from the entire world. It's not just South Africa, it's everyone who cares. South Africa must entrench a new world where we care about others, and not a world that promotes hatred, ethnicity, and sectarianism. And we, given what we have done emerging from apartheid, we have the ability to put that sort of notion and voice in the world. So let us develop this common message, and let us not tire until the people of Palestine are free, just as we are free. I wish to say Jazakallah khair for listening to me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.